Dr. Peter Whittle. Peter's a PhD in plant pathology. I think he's also a South Australian originally. So PhD in plant pathology and plant breeding, expertise across grains, winter cereals and sugarcane. He's been principal scientist in Biosecurity Queensland, retains a link to QUT as an adjunct associate professor. He's now with Horticulture Innovation Australia, adding value to many plant industry projects. His presentation this afternoon is a good one to finish up on, which is towards preparedness of Australia's industries, activities, coordinations and challenges. Please welcome Peter.
Thank you, Jeff. I haven't followed up the Deputy Prime Minister ever before. That's a first. There's always one. Thank you, Trevor. So the first thing that I wanted to do was, coming from an organisation that has most of its base, or a large proportion of its base, in industry, I wanted to acknowledge the effort that has gone into the preparation of this symposium, particularly of the staff of the Department of Agriculture and Water Resources, and also the international speakers who have come so far to give us their wisdom. It's extremely valuable to us, and will put us a long way ahead in trying to deal with this threat that hopefully remains a future threat. I also want to note that we have a number of people here from various plant industries, and that's really great that you're here. We've got, at least on my count, almonds, citrus, olives, macadamias, a couple of grape industries, lavender, truffles, nuts, cotton, cut flower. So we're doing pretty well there. The topic of my talk, I want to emphasise the word towards. We're a long way off what I'd call prepared for the challenge of Xylella. So I'll talk a bit about the activities and the coordination and processes and agencies that are involved, and some of the challenges. But at the end, I'm going to leave those questions largely hanging, because we've still got a long way to go before we can answer them. I want to spend just a little bit of time on the Australian biosecurity framework and system, and what it's all about. In the smaller diagram closer to me, that emphasises the importance both of protecting our productive base through biosecurity measures, as well as the importance of agricultural exports to Australia and the competitive advantage we're given by our relative pest-free status. And some interesting figures there are that our agricultural production is slightly up from $53 billion, and $44 billion of that is exported. So that's across all agricultural industries. On the further diagram, the key objective is to minimise impacts of the pests and diseases on the economy, environment and the community. And we do that under those three bubbles: reducing the likelihood of their entry, preparing and responding to incursions, and managing the pests and diseases if and when they establish in Australia. Just very briefly about the framework that we use to manage that, and I can say that it's under review at the moment in the review of the Intergovernmental Agreement on Biosecurity. And the top bit of text there is about the government agencies that we use. It's interesting to hear about the European system and the need for flexibility and agility that you have, and we have similar, perhaps not as complex. We have the Commonwealth and the states and territories, and then in addition to that we have the industries, and we place a great deal of importance on partnership with the industries in biosecurity. And in that process, right down the bottom I've got many actors, who leads. various of those agencies have lead responsibilities. No one is fully in charge of everything, and so we need processes by which we can reach agreement on priorities and actions. And I think we're quite good at that consensus decision making. The box there about R&D corporations is primarily about the funding of research and development. So my agency, my company is called Horticulture Innovation Australia. We're one of the agricultural research and development corporations, and we manage the investment of industry levies and matching government funding in research, development and marketing. And I'll say a bit more about that later in the talk, and what our processes are and how they've been used for Xylella. We also have other programs, and the one that I've got mentioned there is the Plant Biosecurity Cooperative Research Centre, which is soon coming to an end, and I think all of us are well aware of the magnificent investments and contributions that it's made to our biosecurity over the past years. Including some projects in Xylella. One other point there that is quite small is a new cross-RDC biosecurity initiative. And if you take Xylella, for example, it affects 3 of the different research and development corporations. There's horticulture, the wine grape, and the Rural Industries R&D Corporation. And this new initiative, I don't know what the details of it are at all, except one of our friends here is involved in it, Joe Luck. And we all look forward to working within that and seeing perhaps as a first step what it can do with Xylella. I put this diagram up to try to illustrate an approach that we take to rational decision making about our investments across biosecurity. So we have here a curve of the area occupied by a pest after its incursion, and the different phases of prevention, eradication, containment, and then protecting the asset base. And in the bottom row there, you can see the indicative economic returns. So we have many industries that we deal with. We have many pests within those industries, and we have all of those different phases, and we have to decide how to invest in each of those. And it's very difficult to do, and there are gaps, and there are things that we can't do. This rather complicated diagram that you probably can't read from there and you shouldn't try is a structure that the Department of Agriculture and Water Resources uses to try to prioritise the pests in order to allocate funding. So they've got a series of activity areas, starting with assess risks, implement or revise measures, detect pests, identify pests, and so on. And then going across the page are priorities for prevention, preparedness, and mitigation. And finally, there's a logical decision tree to work through. Coming down, so what we've talked about there is a high-level strategic approach to planning, and then coming down to industry level, Plant Health Australia runs the Industry Biosecurity Planning Program, and all of the industries that are signatory to the Emergency Plant Pest Response Deed will prepare an industry biosecurity plan. And then there are a number of activities that flow down from that plan, such as a farm biosecurity manual. So the industry biosecurity plan identifies the key pests and decides what should be prioritised, and then identifies a few of the measures that should be developed for dealing with those. And one of the things that we've started to do recently is to develop an implementation plan that includes a research and development agenda. And this will be a very important way for us to start to decide what we're going to do to be ahead of pests. We have been a bit random in the past. We have to get better at it, and this will help. And another measure that we've taken is each of these plans, and as they're revised every 5 years, we set up an implementation panel, and that will involve people from the industries, and they will take ownership of that agenda, and they will start to initiate projects and monitor achievement of the goals. And one of the things that they can do, I introduce the term here of concepts to hort innovation, and I'll talk a bit more about that in a tick. So the federal department has identified Xylella fastidiosa as the top priority pest out of its 20 key pests, and has initiated a number of activities to try to prepare for it. There were at least 2 Australians who attended the IPPC workshop in Italy in April of 2016, and they brought back some information. We held a national workshop in June of last year, and there were some presentations there. I'm a plant pathologist. I was generally aware of Xylella. I had read a few things around the place, and I knew it was bad, but I came away absolutely shocked by the presentations about its effect in Puglia in Italy on olives. I'd just travelled there and seen these trees that were hundreds of years old on terraces that were thousands of years old, and it's really appalling to see that. So the workshop looked at industry's capacity to identify and report the disease. It carried out a gap analysis in preparedness activities and plans, and then we took that gap analysis on further. These are some of the things that came out of the gap analysis. So you see down the left, I'm not going to run through each of these, but risk assessment, risk mitigation measures, surveillance, diagnostics, plans and strategies, trade and regulation, communication and awareness, training and exercising and research. We have tried to at least have basic systems in place for each of those, and to identify what are the priorities that flow out of them. Now, all of these are available online in the report of the workshop, if you care to look for it. And some of the outcomes of that workshop, we held a few meetings afterwards with a planning panel. So in each of those key areas, to investigate the surge capacity of diagnostics. This is a problem we often face in Australia when we have an incursion, is always suddenly trying to work out how we bring laboratories together and put people in those laboratories and bring equipment in and start to get up to speed. We try to have diagnostic protocols, approved protocols, ready ahead of time. Communication and awareness, there were promotion activities, targeted industry communication, and of course this international symposium. We do have a contingency plan for the nursery industry, and are developing another contingency plan cross-sector, and we propose to run a simulation exercise. And then we also propose to do a review of response and management strategies. And from what I have seen during this symposium, there's a huge quantity of work in Europe and the US, and perhaps elsewhere that we can access. Now, I'm going to run through what Horticulture Innovation Australia has done, because this is important for the next steps. We're a company that addresses the $9 billion horticulture industry, and we invest around $100 million a year in research and development and marketing. And we try to do that in systematic and strategic ways. And our goal is to help horticultural industries and increase their productivity and profitability. And our funding model, it's all changed from what it used to be, and we're doing it quite differently now. We have two pools of funding, those two round circles nearest to me. We call them Pool 1 and Pool 2. The bottom one is our levy funding, $47 million per year for research and development. And we go out to industry and we ask them what they think is important. And then we invest their funds in projects. With the top one, we have a set of strategic plans in particular areas, and we look for co-investment from anybody who wants to invest in those areas with us, and we match their funds to some extent. So we've got all sorts of things going on there. Going back, the intent of the Pool 2 is more about longer-term strategic research, whereas with the levies, it often deals with more immediate industry problems with, say, a 1 to 3 or 1 to 5 year time frame. We have this thing now called an innovation funnel. That I think if you talk to people who work in the innovation space, they go, oh yeah, one of those, whereas other people who aren't used to it don't really understand it. Basically what it's about is we are looking for ideas for research and development from anybody who wants to put them up, and this can include anybody in this room now. We invite your concepts. You don't own the concepts. Once you give them to us, we take them and look after them. It used to be the case that a researcher would own an idea and they'd put up a fully blown research project to us, and we would review it, and if it was good then we'd sign up on the project with them. We don't do it like that anymore. So if somebody's got an idea that they can encapsulate on one page, we'll look at it, and if our industry panels like it and prioritise it, then we'll look at the funds and see if we can invest in it. We'll put together a scope. We will go out and procure a project in the market, and what we hope to do through our process is to have a really good scope of a project and place that project with the best provider available. And in my experience, to build this system, we had to break down what we had before and build this from the ground up. We've certainly had some teething problems. There have been a lot of delays. There have been times when we've been working off pieces of paper and spreadsheets. It's starting to hum along now, and I think in my experience we can do a lot of the quality assurance up front, and we're starting to contract some good projects, and I certainly hope that that's the way we're going. So the concepts come in, we work with the advisory panels, we develop those into investment proposals, and then we go out to market and make a contract. So coming back to Xylella, I'm doing for time all right? Yep. We put in 4 concepts, and this has been a real challenge to our system because it was one of the, there were 2 big issues. The first one is the fact that we submitted these concepts into the funnel when we were building the system. And so we were working off bits of paper and spreadsheets. And the second problem is that Xylella really stands out as the most complex case in point because 13 of our 33 or more industries are affected by it. And we do not invest any money without going and talking to industry about it first. So when we put together a multi-industry project, we have got a lot of consultation to do, and we've got to tick off every bit of that before we can proceed. And with the Xylella concepts, we unfortunately haven't even completed that yet. We've been working through it, but I think that we're just about to have our summer fruit meeting, and then we'll be ready to roll. We've missed the boat on 2 of the concepts. We were going to partner with the department on this symposium and contribute funds towards it. We were going to fund a communications program that was going to have professional communicators who would be here at this symposium interviewing people like our international guests and getting sound grabs from them. And unfortunately, we've not been agile enough to do it, but in the future we should be able to do that. We expect to fund an emergency response simulation exercise and also the review of management and control that I mentioned. Just coming to a close here, I wanted to use another case study to illustrate what we can do in the way of preparation and planning, and that's with the current incursion that we're dealing with of tomato potato psyllid, and its co-pathogen that we're not aware is in Australia at the moment, which is CLSO, or zebra chip. We knew in 2006 that all of a sudden the risk of this had escalated dramatically because it turned up in New Zealand, and we do have a colleague here from New Zealand, at least one, who is very familiar with the appalling damage that it's caused there. And we began work on it. We initiated our projects at least as early as 2010, consisting of surveillance for TPP and several projects on monitoring and studying native psyllids and their natural enemies. And in the plant biosecurity CRC, they had projects on new approaches for diagnostic pathovars and psyllid microflora, which might be able to teach us about how to manage Librobacter. So the detection in February 2007 led us to go and look closely at those, and very quickly we were able to put in place some investments. We are working with the potato, vegetable and nursery industries at the moment, and also the melons will be consulted at the end of year one to see if they're able to come on board the program. We have refocused the existing potato integrated pest management program to deal with TPP, and because of this previous work we've done on native psyllids, we're in a position to do that, and their enemies. We are just in the process of selecting and will appoint an industry TPP coordinator. This was a very important role in New Zealand, and we have based our scope for this project on the New Zealand experience, and we're just holding the evaluation panel for that in, I think, next week. I'm just trying at the moment to work with SARDI and AgriBio to develop projects for high throughput diagnostic tests for CLSO, which will place us very well for surveillance. And we had an existing project looking for TPP in the eastern states and South Australia. We've continued that project and we're making plans for recontracting it in the second half of this year. And lastly, we're proposing to hold a workshop. We've talked about this, we've agreed it's a good idea, but we haven't put the resources in yet to try and work out how to progress that and when it should be. There is an opportunity in September, but we really need to gallop to make that happen. So just in winding up, I want to come back to the idea of concepts and how everybody is invited to talk to us. This room should be abound with ideas on the things that we should be doing, and I think that in the next session, which will be the panel, we might come up with a conclusion that we need to have a small group to carry this further. And in terms of what we're looking for, Horde Innovation, some of us here would have a pretty narrow view of what research and development is. We actually have the ability to fund projects that can really go outside your constrained view of what R&D is. So don't be afraid to say what you think will make the most difference for horticulture industries. I think that I've covered most of the things there. You can just go to our website easily and find the concept proposal form. And as I mentioned at the beginning, I'm going to leave those questions hanging. We've got a long way to go, but I think we have started the process. Thanks, Jeff.